When Rachel Reeves promised to recruit 6,500 new teachers, I suppose there was room for a little bit of hope. I was saying, well, where are you going to get them from? But who can possibly argue against more teachers in the classroom, more experts? It was a cornerstone pledge, a signal that Labour was serious about educational opportunity. Really, what they ought to be doing is rethinking what teachers do and trying to incorporate a new scheme of teaching with AI and new tech. But what began as an ambition, even in that modest way, has now unravelled into an economic sleight of hand, one that threatens the very fabric of our schools, state and independent schools alike. The issue is not merely that schools lack money to hire more teachers, it's that they're now forced to cut teaching staff to survive. Reeves' decision to raise employers' national insurance contributions, paired with no real terms increase in core school funding, has created what head teachers are calling an inevitable scenario of staff reductions. In other words, for every teacher Labour pledges to add, another will quietly vanish. According to Pepe de Lacio, the head of the Association of School and College Leaders, schools are finding themselves £30,000 to £100,000 short, enough to lose 2 teachers per school. And multiplied across England's 3,452 secondary schools, that's a potential loss of over 6,900 teachers, more than the number that Labour pledged to recruit. A policy designed to expand capacity is, in practice, engineering contraction. Worse still, the so-called support package that Reeves announced, £1 billion to help with the NIC rises, is reportedly leaving schools at up to 30% short of what they actually need. And any school bursar will tell you a shortfall of 30% is not a deficit, it's a disaster. And what of pay? The Department of Education has suggested a 2.8% teacher pay rise. Admirable. Perhaps, until you realise that the Office for Budgetary Responsibility expects average earnings to rise by 3.7% in the same year. So this isn't actually a pay rise, it's a polite pay cut, dressed in technocratic language. Not a single penny extra has actually been earmarked to help schools pay for it. I'm not just talking about state schools here. The damage is bipartisan. Independent schools, long expected to carry their own weight, are now buckling under the triple blow of VAT on fees, loss of business rates relief, and again the NIC rise. St Anselm's in Derbyshire, a 137-year-old prep school once crowned the best in Britain by Tatler, has announced it's closing its doors. It's sin charging fees to parents who work month to month to afford education beyond what the state provides. I've actually placed students in the past in St Anselm's, or at least directed them to St Anselm's. I've been there a few times, and this isn't Eton. This is a place that hard-working families, both in the UK and abroad, have scrimped and saved so that they can send their children to get a solid education. It's not a gilded playground for the trust fund elite. Certainly the people that I spoke to who wanted to find a good school for their children were struggling. This is a school like many others where teachers work miracles daily and where children now face disruption, dislocation and distress. And it's not alone. The Independent Schools Bursars Association predicts 286 closures in the next few years, over 10% of the sector. Labour says that state schools can absorb the influx. But where? Where? If state schools are going to lose teachers, so they're going to lose classrooms effectively, where are they going to absorb these extra 10% from the independent sector coming into the state sector? In which crumbling buildings, with what staff, with using what funds? So the architecture of this policy, Reeves has tried to position herself as the fiscally responsible steward of post-austerity Britain, but raising national insurance contributions, effectively a tax on employment, while proclaiming an employment expansion is economically coherent. It's the equivalent to promising to build more houses while simultaneously taxing bricks. Indeed, this week's spring statement offered no salvation at all. While Reeves was happy to accuse the Conservatives of leaving school roofs literally crumbling, she offered not a penny in capital relief. Instead, she championed 10 new technical excellence colleges, a euphemism one suspects for doing less with more headlines. Meanwhile, thousands of existing schools teeter on the edge of collapse. Daniel Kabedi of the National Education Union captured it perfectly. Austerity is ended in deeds, not words. And Labour's deeds here do not suggest renewal, but rather managed decline. And in response, government officials point out that 50 private schools typically close each year anyway. Well, perhaps. But that's like justifying shipwrecks by noting that people drown every day. When schools of quality, history and local significance begin to fold, not for poor teaching or mismanagement, but for punitive fiscal design, that is no longer natural attrition, that is political choice. Rachel Reeves' school policy is therefore emblematic of a wider problem. If she were closing these schools of excellence because she was actually helping other schools, then that might be something to celebrate, but she isn't. Nobody is coming out of this with a grin, except the taxman, of course. It promises. It promises what? It promises chaos. Rachel Reeves' words talk about excellence, while she is actually starving the system. It recruits on one line of the spreadsheet and fires on the other. It expects heads to perform miracles on shrinking budgets and then penalises them for failing to do so. Here's a simple truth, which was given to me by a senior educationalist. The question to ask of any school is, have they changed the head? A good head, we are told, can turn around a school in crisis. But here's the rub. If Labour continues this policy, many schools won't get the chance to hire anyone, let alone a transformative leader. More than that, heads are actually being paid more than they ever have in the past. They'll be cutting. They'll be cutting heads. Guillotining heads, not recruiting them. The legacy of this policy will not be one of social mobility, nor of educational renewal. It will be an entry in the books. Schools minus staff, minus funds, minus futures. That's what the school accountants will be writing. Schools closed.